The idea of money, power, and respect for me definitely came from hip hop, right? I'm definitely an 80s baby, and so clearly go back to the Lox, who was one of my favorite rap groups at the time, singing that. But I just think that thread, that idea has been prevalent in hip hop from the 90s all the way through today. But I also think that what we're seeing is like how that thing played out, right? For those of us chasing money, power, and respect. I think today hip hop is on trial. Puff on trial, Dirk on trial, ASAP Rocky on trial, Thug on trial, right? You just name it. The question and the check is, what are you chasing? What are your goals? What is your true driving force? Ambition times something else can lead to really, really bad decisions, really, really bad behaviors. But ambition in its own self, I wouldn't put a negative slant on, right? I want people to be as ambitious as possible. I just want them to apply it to things that are positive and healthy and good for them, their families, and our culture.
Ladies and gentlemen, theys and thems, I am your host, Lene Vani, and welcome back to another episode of The People's Brief. We truly hope you've been having a great time with us so far, and we thank you for welcoming us into your homes week after week and trusting us with some of your most pertinent stories. Tonight, we wish to shake some things up a little bit because it's time to address something big, something relevant, something timely, and something core to the betterment of our communities from the inside out. And that, my friends, is how we handle money, power, and respect. Tonight, we're going to speak on a matter that requires special attention, and because of that, we have crafted a very special episode. 2 of them, actually. With that, we welcome you to part 1 of Money, Power, and Respect, a mini documentary that exposes the misuse of power that is prevalent in Black communities. You may recognize the title from the song by the Lox, DMX, and Lil' Kim, produced by Sean Puffy Combs and Bad Boy Records in 1998. The hook reads, first you get the money, then you get the power, and then you get the respect. Our question here tonight is, what are you doing to get that money? What are you doing with the power, and what does respect look like to you, and what is the cost of it all? It's no secret that Diddy had a fall from grace. But given his alleged transgressions, can we really describe the influence that he held, the power he once yielded, as grace? Or was it exploitation? See, herein lies the problem. This isn't an isolated incident. This isn't just a Diddy thing, nor is it a problem that can just be undermined or relegated to what he personally liked to do in the bedroom. This is about how some prominent Black figures have unfortunately fallen victim to doing their best to emulate the white man. And we do this by juxtaposing the blueprint that rich white men have laid for how to amass power, and then what they do with it, and who suffers from it when they get it. Today, we challenge the idea of invincibility by highlighting the detriment to community that often goes hand in hand with the perversion of power, the byproduct of trying to do what white men do. So we're calling everybody in, not just the perpetrators, but the people who cape for them as well. These actions don't just create chatter and banter online, but real-life consequences for the women and the queer folk who are often on the receiving end of this abuse. We ask questions like, what are we sacrificing when we look for these heroes? And where does that leave the rest of us? So don't go anywhere. It's about to get serious.
Brandon Davis, take 1. Mark.
Well, money, power, respect has cost me a lot of things in my life. It cost me my freedom for a significant amount of time. It also cost me my financial freedom. You know, in times where you're doing things illegal, and if your activity catches up with you and you go to prison, it's kind of like, especially with the federal government, it's like they strip you from everything. My name is Brandy Davis. I'm a motivational speaker, and I did 10 years in federal prison for drug trafficking.
When I hear that question, money, power, what does money, power, respect mean to me? I immediately go to myself as a man. It means it is my responsibility to my family to have some of it all. The money is what a man is supposed to lead, provide, right? That's where the money comes from. The respect is the name, right? Go outside, you be like, yo, that's such and such son, you know, like that's a respect. And then the power it's a little tricky because, you know, it's fleeting and you never know where it's gonna go, but it's something necessary for a man to have. I'm Ray Daniels, aka the Culture Referee, music executive / media executive.
So painting a picture of pre-colonial Africa as it pertains to wealth and prosperity, the first thing you have to do is you have to define wealth. What was wealth in pre-colonial Africa? Money as a modern concept wasn't really a part of pre-colonial Black Africa for the most part, because listen, early on you had coins, but later on we used cowrie shells. I mean, natural resources, gold, salt. This was what we were using. The barter system, trading. I have, therefore you have. So it was less about paper money being printed up and saying that's wealth. It had more to do with the wealth of knowledge, the wealth of sharing with your neighbor. All of that was wealth. All of that was prosperity. And it wasn't just based on just a piece of paper. The thing about it is prosperity itself, when it comes to pre-colonial Africa, to prosper meant to gain wisdom, to be a good leader, a leader for your family, a leader for the community. Community is the epicenter of all things prosperity based in pre-colonial Africa, which really kind of spilled over into shared wealth in the community, because shared wealth just simply means because I have, you have. You're not gonna go without because I have. So we're gonna share this, and together as a community we'll elevate. That's what shared wealth was. The way Black people conceived power on American soil, it was many different ways. One way that stands out to me was, first of all, let's start here. There were over 300 insurrections. These were fights to topple the institution of slavery, even if it was just that one particular plantation. Power for those people at that time, our ancestors, really meant power over your own body, power over your own, your freedom, power over the freedom of your family, your mother, your father, your siblings, your children. They did whatever they needed to do by any means necessary, like Malcolm said, in order to gain that power. I think about the Civil War. We got up into the 100,000s of Black soldiers. The thinking was fighting alongside the Union is going to once again bring us freedom through power. That power was war, but the main focus was to ultimately be free, to own myself, to be my own man, my own woman, and have our own family. I think about the war songs. We call them the Negro spiritual, but these were war songs. These were songs that had embedded into them directions. Follow the drinking gourd if you're gonna escape. The drinking gourd was the Big Dipper. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. When the hounds are chasing you because you've tried to escape, wade in the water. It's gonna take the scent off you, and those dogs can't catch you. So these songs were songs of war. They knew they were in a war, although we don't call it a war. They knew they were at war. And I think music played a role, as well as weaponry and as well as just fighting in order to gain power over your own self and your own freedom.
Early 19th century assimilation is a tough pill for some people to swallow. Whether or not we should have fought for integration, or whether a seat at the table is actually something Black people in America should aspire to, has been hotly debated in every decade in the century and a half since the enslaved were emancipated. But the truth is, proving that we could play the white man's game was necessary for Black Americans to gain any foothold in a society that would wantonly menace, torment, and oppress anyone who dared defy their game. But as scholar and author Dr. Brittany Cooper suggests, just because it was necessary for our survival does not mean it was designed to sustain us. Poet Audre Lorde coined the phrase, "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house," and we know it well in our community. But somehow we still haven't seemed to learn that copying the white man will never get us far.
You'll take one, Mark.
My North Star is to live my life fully, to maximize the person that I am. I believe that in all of us, God has put gifts, talents, passions, everything that I need to be great, everything that I need for my assignment is already inside of me. And so I believe the job is not about chasing something externally, but figuring out how to unlock and release what is already there. And so a life well lived for me is one where I am fully operating in my passions, where I'm fully operating in the gifts and the talents that I've been given, where I'm fully operating on my mission and my assignment. And what I realize in life is the closer I feel like I am to that, the more joy I have, the more happiness I have, the more peace I have. My name is Datavio Samuels. I'm the CEO of Off Script Worldwide and Revolt.
So, Datavio, do you think that you ever believed that you had to follow the rich white man in order to get to where you wanted to be?
Yeah, not at all. There's nothing about whoever the rich white man is that has powered any of my dreams. I'm a big believer. I just think our dreams should come from the inside.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in all of these things being self-defined. I think we get a lot of things wrong because we have an external disposition. It's easier to see the gifts, the talents, the wealth that other people have that you don't have. And I think we get that wrong. I think everything that we need is inside of us. If you want to understand the purpose of a thing, you have to understand the designer's intent. And when you look at the designer's intent, it's always reflected in the thing that they make. And so you have to look inside to see, how was I made? What was I made for? And then go chase those things. So no, I haven't, maybe when I was young, 18, 19, 20, fresh out of college, I was chasing what looked cool, what looked fun. But without question in my adult life, it's all been internal. It's all been conversations between me, myself, and God in terms of how I found kind of my way and my North Star.
Yeah. What strategies do you use to maintain that sense of identity tied to purpose in predominantly white spaces that may be intimidating for you to be original, individual, industrious in that as well?
Yeah, the strategy for me is just to know it and know it well. I think about superheroes when I think about this. It's like you got to know yourself so well. Spider-Man knows that he shoots webs out of his hands and soars through the... Superman knows he's got lasers that come out of his eyes and he flies. There's a cartoon back in the days, Captain Planet. I don't know if you know Captain Planet, right? And so you had the one who had fire, you had the one that controlled Earth. And when the moment comes, each one of them knows, this is my moment. This is what I am called to do. I think that we have to be so clear about who we are in that way in order to be successful. And then I think the misnomer or the confusion is when we think that when we get into spaces that feel uncomfortable, that we are supposed to leave those things on the table. So for me, it's understanding who I am and recognizing that no matter what room I'm in, this is the thing that's going to allow me to win. This is my cheat code. This is my competitive advantage. And the one place where I'm not leaving my competitive advantage on the table is in the place that is the least familiar.
In the context of maintaining identity, purpose, mission in a white world as Black Americans, I think what a lot of people don't understand is that we come from a collectivist society, and the sort of power structure that we're under prides individualism and is not community oriented. And so when we amass wealth, it is all about self. Sometimes there's philanthropy, but most likely in causes that, eventually allow money to go right back into those philanthropists' pockets. So how do you set wealth goals that are community oriented?
Yeah, a big piece for me is just knowing your purpose. And so when I think about my purpose, I think about three things. I think about one, which is Christ, two, which is corporate and what I will do in the business setting, and then three, which is culture and community. And so there's never a thing that I will do that will leave my culture or my community behind. It is anchored in who I am. When you think about Off Script and Revolt, it is embedded in the business model. And so there's not a world or an opportunity where those things don't exist, because I am focused on living a life that is on purpose. And I think in the same way, I think it would be foolish for me to not try to build companies that could be worth billions of dollars because of the gifts and the opportunities that God has given me. I think it would be foolish for me to not leverage those same gifts and those same tools to help elevate my community and my culture.
But why is that important to you? You get a lot of people who get to where they are in life and are fine, but you speak with such passion and conviction about making sure that you're pouring in. It is not to say that we shouldn't be waiting on a return on our investment, but what is that return that we're looking for?
So much of life is perspective. and the perspective that I have around this incredible community of people who are some of the most gifted, some of the most talented, and I don't care in what city you go to, or country you go to, or continent you go to, they are also the most oppressed. And so because I see the genius, people don't hold you down like that unless they are afraid of something being unlocked. And so it's not just because my father taught it to me, it's also because I am trying to do my part on my piece of the timeline to help my people unlock what is inside of us. When the George Floyd stuff first happened, when he was murdered, and there was this massive movement, I actually thought we were at an inflection point. And so I thought I was gonna be a part of the timeline that would see this whole thing flip. And then like a year, 2 years in, I was like, that's not really what it is. But my job is to do what Martin did, which is to move the ball forward. My job is to do what Malcolm did, which is to move the ball forward. And so inspired by my father, taught by my father, inspired by my perspective and my belief in the people who are superhuman and incredible, I'm just trying to do my part for my piece of the timeline.
You know, when you look at entertainment as a whole and how status and financial gain for oneself oftentimes looks like success, we first have to define what success is. Because if you look at success from the perspective of success is driving a certain type of car, living in a certain neighborhood, having a certain amount of money in your bank account, getting a certain amount of views, that's success. Oftentimes people will do any and everything to get that, to gain that, to get that money, to drive that car. But ultimately, if we look at it from the perspective and we teach that excellence is what we're trying to get to. If you're a singer, if you're a rapper, if you're a producer, if you're a lawyer, you want to chase excellence. Excellence is the thing that we're looking for, because if you excel at a thing and you become excellent at a thing, the money will come, but the money can't be your end-all be-all. You've got to be excellent, because then you're valuable. You're bringing value into the room. And when you bring value into the room, people pay you. So we have to push excellence over just simply success.
For me, growing up, my father was in the street, so I grew up in the city of Detroit. So for me, it's like when you grow up in a town that's with a whole bunch of hustle and bustle, or a whole bunch of hustlers, it was like the guys that you seen with the nice cars, the guys that you seen with the flashy jewelry, the guys that you seen with the big wads of money, those were the people that attracted the attention and mostly got the respect because they exuded some type of power. So I feel like if you're able to look like you wealthy, act like you wealthy, move around like you wealthy, a lot of people will more so give you more respect instead if they look at you like you don't have anything. As I got older, the effects of the life that my father provided for me, I looked at it from a different perspective. As a child growing up, I kind of had the silver spoon life. Like, we went to private school, we had a big house with a swimming pool, like taking trips and everything like that. So I used to get up and see my daddy getting up every day. So I figured in my mind he was going to work. So for me, I'm like, I lived a typical suburban life like the rest of the kids in the neighborhood that I grew up in. But as I started getting older and I started moving a little more around in the streets, you know, you start getting a whiff of things. Like, even growing up, a kid, when he cut into my older sister one day and was like, you know what your daddy do? And my sister like, no, like, what? He was like, your daddy a drug dealer. So my sister was like, oh, really? You know, she's 5 years older than me. So it wasn't nothing I think that I was ashamed of, because of the things that my father's lifestyle was able to provide for us. And as I gotten older, I had a different type of respect. Not more so as glorifying him being a drug dealer. I had the respect of him being a man. For me, my perspective was he was a stand-up guy. You know, he took care of his family. He had a good name in the streets. And everything I felt that my father did was to make a better life for us. When my father grew up, they grew up very poor. You know, he watched his father work really, really hard, and they barely were making it. Like, my daddy was born in 1943. So my father went through the civil rights movement. He encountered a lot of racism in his life. So I think that all those experiences that he had that was trauma or struggle, in his mind it made him go harder so his kids wouldn't have to go through the things he went through when he was younger. When I got federally indicted in 2008, I thought at that time I was at the top of my game. I was driving foreign cars, I had jewelry, I had clothes, I had a nice place to live. And when in that moment when I got indicted, they took everything away from me. They took my car, they went to my house, they took my jewelry, they ransacked my house, they stole stuff even though they're not supposed to. A lot of things was taken from me, so I basically was robbed by law enforcement. So it's like they stripped me to everything to where I was at rock bottom. So at the end, I was preparing myself to serve 10 years in prison, at the same time wondering when I got out how I was gonna survive, because I didn't have anything. I think that the lifestyle, the music, the entertainment, it kind of glorifies that lifestyle of hustling, but it never shows the side of when it all comes crashing down. It's an illusion. So people see the good part of it, but they don't see the bad side of it, the negative side. Like, it's guys that get robbed and killed for drugs. It's people that's doing life in prison for drugs. It's guys who took care of their whole family, and when they go to jail, their family don't have nobody to lean on and support them or take care of them. So it's putting your family in a bad position. So I feel that all the glitz and the glamour is an illusion, because a lot of times what you see is not really what you get. If I can go back and change my heroes, I wouldn't change my father, because that was my hero. Like, and I know that when you're a parent, you don't come with a handbook. You know, you just try to be the best parent you can and get through life and try to raise the best kids you can possible. And I never hold nothing that my father went through or did against him, because I know he was just trying to be the best dad he can be. So regardless of my father's past, regardless of how society might look at him because of the things that he did in his life, he gonna forever be my hero, because I learned a lot from him. You know, things that stick with me now, you know, and that's my father and his unconditional love. And I'm never gonna look at him any different because he made bad decisions like anybody else can make the bad decisions.
Let me start with the glorification of the dope boy and the pimp. First and foremost, hip hop has never been a monolith, all right? So just like you have Big Bank Hank saying, hemp the dimp, the ladies pimp, all the ladies fight for my delight, you also have DMC within a certain amount of years saying, me and my Adidas do the illest things. We like to stomp out pimps with diamond rings. These things have always existed. Let's say It Takes Two by Rob Bass. Don't smoke Buddha, can't stand sex. He's talking about marijuana. Just a few years later, we have Dr. Dre's The Chronic. And then after we have The Chronic, we have the Fugees saying, ooh la la la, with the natural la that the refugees bring. So we've always had these various different sides of it, but balance has always been very important. But there's a particular thing that happened in hip hop. Come with me with this, all right? You had the drug dealer funding sometimes some of the early rappers. Funding meaning, mainstream was looking at rap like it was a joke. This is a fad, this is gonna go away. But in neighborhoods, sometimes the drug dealer paid them to perform at their nightclub. So there began to be this interweave, with the two. At some point, you had some of the drug dealers starting to fund the artists. Later on, you started having some of the drug dealers starting to become artists and putting the drug money into the actual art that came out. Now we have a conundrum here, because you have a record label who's been very oppressive, a record label who has almost run it like a plantation, exploiting the culture. And then on the other side, here you have the drug dealer putting up money for that artist, but then you also have a representation of poison in the community there. So now we're in a conundrum. What do we do? Who's the hero here? And that's when the blurred line really began, to me, especially in the rap industry. All right, now we got to come back to balance, and we have to say, first and foremost, the original heroes of the Black experience always kept community first. Community first. I have, so you have. If you're looking at a black hero and the hero does not seem to have the community at heart, that is not a hero. That is something else. And you have to recognize that, no matter how much money is involved.
For too long, Black people have been operating in survival mode. The long freedom fight, facing barriers to access over and over again, perpetually looking for a North Star, a way out, can take its toll on the mind. Multiply that by countless generations and we begin to see an unending lack mindset that too many of us employ. And what happens psychologically when a fear of poverty is all you know? How does the absence of money, power, and respect impact how one pursues it?
When you start thinking about money, power, and respect, immediately you start thinking about making it, validation, what everyone aspires to. But as a psychologist, it's really what that means to the particular person, because you can have money, power, and respect and still not be happy, right? You can still not feel connected. You can still feel empty. You can feel even betrayed, because I thought once I get the trifecta, money, power, and respect, I will have everything I want, but you can still feel very empty and shallow. My name is Dr. Aldewan Tart. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been focusing on relationships, mental health issues, and helping people overcome trauma for over 30 years. When you lack, how does that affect your life? All right, we can't pay rent. We can't afford the best schools. We may not be able to move from some safety. A lot of your life is focused on what you lack. And so growing up, you start thinking early on, you don't have this comfort of being okay. You start thinking early on, let's take a man, a boy. How can I help mama out? How can I help grandma out? How can I make things easier, right? Because you see lack. And so you immediately start thinking of ways to be able to make it happen. And so the lack begins to create this drive for money. All right, this drive for consumption, and it's really a safety response, all right? And you see it with a lot of hip hop culture, you see it with a lot of entertainers, is that they come out and they're looking to not only make money, but it's make money to take care of others and to get out of where you come from, to rescue. The heaviness of it is that you're not trying to just rescue yourself. And so it creates this continuous drive to always provide not only for you, but for everyone you know, who you're close to. From a positive standpoint, power allows you to be able to have that freedom to do what you want, to be able to impact change, to be recognized for who you want to be and be able to do what you want to do, right? The downside is two places psychologically where we worry about people. People at their lowest of lows and people at their highest of highs, all right? So when we start talking about power and validation, one of the things that they're surprised is that you start to lose empathy, right? You're like, look, if I made it, how come you can't make it, right? And if I can do anything that I want without needing people, then why would I form relationships? We see it in a religious community where people inadvertently rely less on God. What do I need God for? If I'm able to make a phone call and have my kids accepted into college, or to make things happen, or to get any role I want, or to make things work, I use my power, right? And so you lose empathy, you lose connection, and so you also lose distance and a heartbeat for the people. On the positive side is if you see the ability to, like say in the media, right? You want to tell a story in a way that is creative. You want to tell a story in a way that is impactful, that has the impact that you want on the people watching it. Well, if you're writing the checks or you have the connections, you have the ability to do that. So that can make you happy. So it depends on how you use it. Second part of that is validation, right? So when you depend on your power, if you depend on that, it can actually be a negative to your ego. Because I need the validation, I need the likes, I need everyone to buy this album, I need everyone to like me, I need everyone to say, hey, you're funny, right? I need that external validation to make me feel internal. But the problem is when that's not happening, I don't feel good about myself. or I eternally need it. I don't have anything that says, hey, you know, I did that project for me, like Andre 3000. All right, he plays the flute. He doesn't care whether you like it or not. This is what he wants to do. So he has internal validation. But what if he felt like, no, I have to be outcast. I have to be who you want me to be. I have to be what sells albums and records are, what the streets are, what my past identifies, right? When you don't have the freedom to be you, it can be a cost. Let's look at President Trump. All right, he's unchecked. All right, absolute power corrupts absolutely. What does that mean? There's no checks and balances. There's no one to help you have a filter as whether you're doing too much. Now, a lot of that is intentional for him, but that's his power play. Because he's left unchecked, right? He doesn't see that his life is spiraling. To him, wherever people respond to me, because I dictate with fear. It's the same thing gangsters do. It's the same thing high-powered CEOs do. Is that if you're afraid of me, I can control things, but you lose that empathy. You lose the heart of the people, and you begin to lose yourself because you're just driving with fear, all right? And so there's also no one, let's look at it from an artist standpoint. There's no one there to keep you on the edge of creativity because you're the only one having an opinion. And we know from the studies of creativity, it comes from a flow of other people saying, hey, you could go this direction with it, or you could go this direction. And so that's how a lot of artists fall off, right? It's that they started with this creative process where people could say, you know, I would have gone this way with it, or let's do this. And then when they start having an ego, they only hear themselves, which limits their creativity. So left unchecked, it limits your creativity. It limits your ability to really form real human connections with people. It will keep you in power, but once you're out because you don't have that social human capital, which you know in this industry means everything. Let's take an angle that's popular. Narcissism, all right? You hear that term thrown around. And when we talk about true narcissism, it usually comes from a lack of not being seen. Think about it. What would make someone always want to be front and center? What would make someone want to control and manipulate other people, right? It's not that they're bad, but usually you look back at how they're raised, that's how they learn power and control. You have to manipulate. Or if it's not about me, I can't trust you to love me. I can't trust for you to come around and think about me. Maybe they were raised in deprivation. Maybe they were raised with a mom who was depressed and an absent dad, so they had to survive, right? So they had to think me first, right? And so when you start talking about someone that has narcissistic traits that come from lack, all right, they're not going to think about their partners. They're not going to think about what's best for the team. Everything is going to be me oriented. So they end up ostracizing a lot of the team that they build with because people start to know them. He or she's only about self. They start sabotaging relationships because while you're getting everything and I'm giving everything, I'm not getting anything out of this relationship. And so what you'll see with a true narcissist is that they'll fail at almost every single relationship. And so what a lot of people need is awareness that there's a choice. You don't have to have learned helplessness. No matter what situation you're in, someone's worked it. That's the beauty and the built and the resiliency and the grit of people of African descent. We've come out of slavery. People have made it. The other piece is that it's not easy, right? And that you'll need some help, and that you'll need some mentorship, and that you'll need to follow your divine blessing. So you have to combine, yes, recognizing the system, but also realizing that there is a way to work around it, especially if you use your tribe.
You know, when I was in grad school, I wrote my thesis on avarice. It's a fancy old-timey word for greed. I chose this subject after reading a little book called Le Système colonial dévoilé. It was written by a man named Baron Devasty, a mulatto revolutionary who served as the chief publicist in post-revolutionary Haiti. The book was well known as an anti-slavery text because it basically told the French if they were to ever come by here, it would be their last trip. But here's my point. The book only has 2 chapters. The first one lays out a map for how the French ruled with tyranny. The second chapter outlines in great detail the varied and dastardly and sickening, treacherous punishments the French used to inflict on the enslaved, all in the name of avarice or greed. Avarice is mentioned in the text numerous times, making the case that these white people were indeed themselves slaves to greed. And all of the things they did to other human beings, like sewing them up live in the bellies of diseased animals, making them eat one another's feces, putting their bodies into grinders meant for sugarcane. They did all of this in service to greed. And sure, all of that's pretty extreme, but it's real. It's history. And it is the tradition of the European legacy of money, power, and respect this country comes from. The lengths we are willing to go to get it have really only been inhibited by law and order and what people can get away with. But we have a choice now, and times are continuing to change. So who among us will hold the greedy accountable? We'll find out next week.